Although the Imperial Japanese Navy would eventually try and mass-produce a modification of the Hiryu design later on in World War II as the Unryu class, there were a number of abortive steps between Taio and Unryu. Relatively little is known about each of them compared to some other never-built designs, in part because of the somewhat back-of-the-napkin nature of a few of the ideas, and in part thanks to the loss of records at the end of World War II. Nonetheless, we're going to take a brief look at the G14 and G15 fleet carrier projects and see what we can glean. The G14 class is part of what is commonly referred to as the Circle 5 or Maru 5 plan, officially the 5th Naval Armament Enhancement Plan. Circle 3 had included Yamato, Musashi, Shokaku and Zuikaku, and Circle 4 had included Shinano and a sister ship, as well as the carrier Taio, amongst others. Circle 5 and Circle 6 were drawn up after a series of smaller programs between 4 and 5, with Circle 5 specifically drawn up in 1940 as a response to the Two-Ocean Navy Act in the USA, whilst Circle 6 was in response to the US expanding their shipbuilding still further in 1941, with, amongst other things, the Montanas and the 5th and 6th Iowas, along with a bunch of Essex class. Circle 5 initially called for 3 carriers of the G14 type, although this seems to have been revised several times, with ship number 801 and 802 most commonly listed as the final specification for the class, the third ship having been revised to a smaller carrier design. These could possibly be described as super Taio types, as they were supposed to have armoured flight decks, which typically constrain the number of aircraft carried for a ship due to the weight involved compared to armoured hangar decks, but by upscaling the design to somewhere between 45 and 50,000 tons, which would have put them on a par with the much later Midway and Malta class designs, sufficient space was restored to the hangar deck to carry either 84 or 92 aircraft using typical Imperial Japanese air groups of the time, depending on your source, although some Japanese articles also indicate that there was a proposal by Admiral Yamaguchi to make these ships flush-decked, with an island that could be raised or lowered depending on if you wanted to conduct command or flight operations, and the purpose of this was to clear the flight deck to allow for the use of a proposed twin-engine naval strike aircraft. Whatever the final form this giant may have taken, the numbers were cut down further to just 1 ship in the modified wartime Circle 5 program, and none would actually ever be authorized or built. What was included in the modified Circle 5 program was yet another design, G15 or Kai Taiho, standing for Modified or Improved Taiho. These were somewhat less ambitious ships, with a standard displacement of around 30,500 tons, which was about 1,000 tons more than Taiho herself. This weight was used to make a series of minor improvements to protection and armament, as well as expanding the size of the ship, with the objective of keeping the air group at a similar size to Taiho, with 61 active aircraft of the latest A7M and B7A types, which were considerably larger and heavier than the previous generations of Japanese carrier fighters and bombers. Some sources suggest a larger air group of 75, but if true, this is most likely to represent the air group if using the older, smaller aircraft then in production, if insufficient new aircraft could be procured. Powered by 160,000 shaft horsepower, driving 4 screws for a top speed of just over 33 knots, 5 ships were planned, numbered 5021 through 5025. The aforementioned increases in protection, including a slightly stronger torpedo defense system, the addition of 4 more dual-purpose guns for a total of 16, the same as the Shokaku class, ammunition hoists directly to the flight deck to allow aircraft to be armed whilst outside of the hangar, and a basic radar suite. The flight deck itself would be armoured similarly to the Taiho. These would be the last full fleet carriers designed by the Imperial Japanese Navy. The Unryus were being developed as part of the same plan, and later programs would look at, but not get around to building, smaller, cheaper carriers that were more akin in capabilities to an Independence class. But with the Kai Taihos representing a larger financial investment and needing a longer build time as compared to the smaller Unryus, and keeping in mind the urgent need to replace carriers after the Battle of Midway, it was decided to put these larger ships on hold and concentrate first on the faster-to-build Unryu class. By the time the revised start date for the Kai Taihos, 1944, rolled around, it was quite clear that whatever else was going to happen to Japan, a carrier that would take 3 years to complete and thus only enter service in 1947 or later was going to be completely useless to the Imperial Japanese Navy, and so these ships were also never laid down.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.